Hey man, I'm Chris with PhoneCats, and here is the Magic the Gathering Duels of the Planeswalker 2014 Unfinished Business Black and Blue Reanimator deck. Here's a quick scan through. A lot of the blue is card draw. It's just card draw, and a lot of the black is recursion. There's a lot of cards that I'm not running that are really good. I mean, there's like a control build that you can do for this deck. There's so many board wipes that have high casting costs, and then there's just piles of cards that I'm not using in this deck right now that look so strong. We'll go through this first initial build of this deck, and this is not like a build that I would say is the best by any means. I'm still feeling this deck out, and right now I still can't get over the fact that you can do some crazy combos. Before we start diving into each card, we'll just show you what the god play is for this deck. Turn 1, Putrid Imp. 1 mana for a 1/1. Discard a card. This thing gains flying until end of turn. Threshold, as long as there's 7 or more cards in your graveyard, it gets +1/+1 and can't block. That threshold thing is cute. No one cares about it. If it happens, you'll be like, oh, holy crap, I actually got threshold out of Putrid Imp, Jesus. The main thing is discard a card. Okay, here's what you're going to want to discard. You're going to want to discard something fat. My build is probably flawed right now. I feel like I don't have enough fat creatures. Right now I only have 17 creatures. So normally I'm having to look in my opponent's graveyard and get creative. But whatever, let's stay strong. Let's say, I mean, either one of... You have so many choices. You have so many choices. You could do a Runescar Demon, but my favorite play is Tidespout Tyrant. So you discard this. Flying 5/5, whenever you cast a spell, return target permanent to its owner's hand. Okay, so turn 1, you play your dude, Putrid Imp, you discard a card, you discard your Tyrant. If you can't discard your Tyrant, you have lots of other choices. You have a Runescar Demon that will let you just go grab anything, and you have a 6/6 Demon, which is crazy. You have a Sphinx of Magosi, which just turns into permanent card draw and buffing itself. If they don't remove it, it puts them on a 3-turn clock. It's insane. You'll draw cards. Desperate moves include the Kiga, the Tidestar, 6 mana for a 5/5 flying, and when it dies, gain control of target creature. So even if they kill it, you're going to take something. River Kelpie is combo-tastic in card draw, but not aggressive enough for this situation. So those are your choices right now. But let's stick with the Tidespout Titan. Next turn, turn 3, you're either going to reanimate, which makes you lose some life, or you can exhume. Let's just say you're going to exhume, because there's 4 of these. But you got reanimates as a backup, and you got 4 of those Putrid Imps. So turn 1, Putrid Imp. Discard a huge creature. Turn 2, exhume. Your opponent has nothing in their graveyard that's a creature at this time. If they've been playing creatures, you haven't been killing them, and you're definitely not blocking. So, turn 2, exhume. You have nothing in your graveyard? Oh, well I have the fattest of the fat. It's not even the fattest of the fat, but it's Tidespout Tyrant. 8 mana for a 5/5. Now every time that you cast a spell, you return target permanent to its owner's hand. Do you know what you're going to return to their hand? Probably land. And you just have them locked now. So not only are you swinging in with that 5/5 every turn, I mean, that's a 4-turn clock right there. But you're also bouncing land, bouncing a flyer that they could block with. It's just one of the most aggressive freak openings that you can pull. And it's not even that rare. You know how sometimes the black decks will, when they go second, they'll not even play a land just to discard their Grave Titan and then reanimate their Grave Titan? You can do that. You can do that too. And this deck has 3 reanimates. You're going to have no problems getting creatures into the graveyard because you have Putrid Imps, which I could pull out, honestly. They're not even that good. You have these Hidden Horrors, which are huge, just 4/4 walls to me. I mean, you can attack with them if need be, but normally I'm just trying to slow my opponent's momentum. 3 mana for a 4/4. When this enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless you discard a creature card. you're going to discard something fat. That's the goal. You're going to discard a Tyrant, a Rune Demon, Sphinx of Magosi, the Tide Star, even a River Kelpie is fine. We skimmed right over some things, so let's at least touch base on some of the other stuff. We talked about Reanimate lightly. Accumulated Knowledge is in this deck for card draw. So all it does is just put you closer to the combo cards. And that's how I look at this deck. It's just a crazy combo deck. If you want to do control build, you can go way more control, but right now I just can't get over the fact of sprinting towards reanimating one of my favorite cards in this deck. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about a lot of the creatures that I'm not running that are huge. We'll start with the fattest of the fat. Demon of Deathgate, you can play with this guy too. 9 mana for a 9/9. You can pay 6 life and sacrifice 3 black creatures rather than pay his mana cost, which is weird to me. And he has Flying Trample. I've already lost games playing against this deck, and they just got a really quick reanimated Demon of Deathgate, and I couldn't deal with a 9/9 Flying Trample, dude. That's really strong. Next creature in line is the Scion of Darkness. 8 mana for a 6/6 Trample. And god, that art is really crazy. When Scion of Darkness deals combat damage to a player, and he probably will with that Trample, you may put target creature card from that player's graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Dude, that's really strong. And I just realized this guy has cycling. I have got to find him. I have got to put this in my deck. I have got to find a way to put this in my deck. So turn 3, at the end of your opponent's turn, you can cycle this dude. And then just reanimate him in a slew of different ways. Hopefully not literally a reanimate because that costs so much mana. But that's an option. I've lost games against Tidal Kraken. This thing can't even be blocked. So if they can't kill it, you're just swinging in for 6 each turn. I don't care if you have a creature that has protection from creatures. I don't care if you have flyers. I don't care if you have a 20/20 over there. I'm still going to attack and you can't block it. The Goliath Sphinx is a little bit more of an aggressive maneuver. I mean, he has an extra 2 power, 1 toughness compared to your Tidal Kraken. And he can be hard casted a turn earlier, but he just has flying. But dealing 8 damage a turn is a 3-turn clock, and only hitting for 6 is a 4-turn clock. So, know that. Oh my god, there's so many creatures. You can play with these Silent Blade Onis, which are 7 mana with ninjutsu. I didn't even know what that is. Well, I'll just tell you now. If I can remember, ninjutsu is a really weird ability. An attacking creature that hasn't been declared a blocker can be ninjutsu'd. You have to pay 6 mana, and the attacking creature that isn't blocked gets ninjutsu'd. It leaves the battlefield and then comes back into play, already attacking. So ninjutsu just dodges all kinds of stuff. It dodges creature removal. It'll dodge an unsummon. It's just ninja-y. So it disappears and it comes back still attacking. But it can only be used on things that aren't declared as blockers. So it's kind of cool, like, I don't know. It's not even good at like hand-to-hand combat. It's ninja-y, and it only works but when it's not fighting something. As a little bonus, when Silent Blade Oni deals combat damage to a player, you can look at that player's hand and cast a non-land card in it without paying that card's mana cost. Dude, there's so many mechanics in this deck to where you're taking stuff from your opponent's hand. It makes me feel like I might be missing out on a big piece of the puzzle. You can cast a non-land card in it without paying that card's mana cost. And that's only if it deals damage to a player. So if it does hit them, they're taking 6 damage. So that puts them on a 4-turn clock till they're dead. And you're also looking in their hand, taking a card out of it, and then using it on your side of the board. I don't know. Maybe that's strong enough to be like a godly turn 2 resurrection. And it's a little black in it, so it can't be Doombladed, and a slew of other things. More creatures, more creatures. Extractor Demon. A lot of people are running these, and we'll see if I join their team. 6 mana for a 5/5 flying. Alright. It's black. Okay. When another creature leaves the battlefield, you may have target player put the top 2 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. Very peculiar. And unearth. So you can pay 3 mana if this card's in your graveyard, and it comes into play with haste, and then gets exiled at the end of the turn. So the unearth thing's a little bit weird. You'll definitely have people surprise you with that unearth, and bam, you have another flyer coming at you with haste for 3 mana. I don't even know who you want to extract your demon. If you're playing a deck with a lot of creatures that you might want to steal, you can do it to your opponent. Or if, I mean, you could do it to yourself and just try to mill yourself to get more cool creatures in your graveyard to respawn. And then who knows, maybe you'll mill an extractor demon. And then do the song and dance again. I don't know. I might end up running that. Okay. We talked about the Silverblade Oni that like to cast cards from their opponent's hand. Here's another thing that does that. Rexiel the Risen Deep. This one's a legendary Kraken though. It's 6 mana for a 5/8, so you can hard cast it a turn earlier. And it has Island Walk and Swamp Walk, which will really surprise you because I think that deals with 8 decks out in Duels of the Planeswalker. Whenever Rexiel the Risen Deep deals combat damage to a player, so it's another thing. It has to hit him. And keep in mind, this guy puts him on a 4-turn clock just as much as our ninja did. But whenever this thing damages a player, you may cast target instant or sorcery card from that player's graveyard. If that card would be put in the graveyard this turn, you exile it instead. That's really heavy. So the ninja dude, you're casting cards from their hand. The Rexiel the Risen Deep, you're casting instants and sorceries out of their graveyard. I don't know. I just really like the sound of that. I'm gonna slowly, completely change this deck, but I gotta find room for that. Don't I? Oh, you Tidespout Tyrants are so cute with your abilities and the rage that you will create, but I don't know. I might be slowly building just a smarter deck. We'll keep it alive. Okay. We were just gonna talk about creatures that I'm not running that were for beefy resurrection. So we threw in a Rexiel the Risen Deep, and we threw in a Scion of Darkness. So we got those ninjas, we got the Risen Deep, and Scion of Darkness is the 4th dude, the 4th card in this deck that has the ability that whenever it deals combat damage, you get to do stuff. This one just is Graveyard Resurrection. This deck is so crazy. So crazy. Okay, so in terms of where we are, we've talked about everything up to accumulated knowledge, so let's at least touch base on this. This was a huge controversy on the forums, and people were geeking out about it, just like math and nerding out about it. 2 mana, draw a card, instant. Pretty bad, right? But then you draw a card equal to the number of cards named accumulated knowledge in all graveyards. Yes, it's in all graveyards, so if you're in a mirror match and your opponent has 4 accumulated knowledges in the graveyard and you have 3 in your graveyard and you cast it, you're going to draw a card and then 7 cards. So that's the craziest cream dream version of it. But most of the time, of course, you're just going to draw 1 card when you first cast it. If you hit 2, you cast it and you draw 2 cards. This is an instant. You're doing it at the end of your opponent's turn. It's really cool. So far I've only hit 2, and that feels fine. When you hit 3, no, I've hit 3 before, and it's equally dope. At the end of your opponent's turn, bam, I just paid 2 mana to draw 3 cards. And that sounds a lot like Ancestral Knowledge to me, just for double the mana and having all these weird catches. But it's cool. You draw cards. It fits the theme of the deck. You're just sprinting towards combos. We got 4 Exhumes. Dimir Doppelganger is so funky. And there's a reason that he's right next to Exhume. Because Exhume allows your opponent to get a creature from their graveyard and put it into play. But if you're picky with your Dimir Doppelganger choices, they're not going to have any creatures in their graveyard. 3 mana for a 0/2. Don't even block with it, it's probably a trick. Even if they're attacking with a 1/1. You can pay 3 mana at instant speed, exile target creature from a graveyard. Dimir Doppelganger becomes a copy of that card and gains this ability. So if you have 6 mana, you can exile a creature from your opponent's graveyard, it copies it. And then exile another card from your opponent's graveyard, it copies it. Next turn you can Exhume, which is the easy choice. You could cast a Living Dead, which sets up more combo-licious stuff. This deck is tricky. You can do it to yourself, and it sucks that you have to exile the creature, but if you needed something super fat to win the game or just to change the tide of the game, you did it. Okay. So, Windfall is available in this deck. I didn't want to run it at first, but it fits the theme of this deck so beautifully that it's irresistible. I don't even know if a turn 3 Windfall is always going to be the best play, but I don't know, it might work out for you. Windfall, 3 mana. Each player discards his or her hand. So if you cast this on turn 3, your opponent might be discarding 4 to 6 cards. Hopefully you went first, so you might have less cards in your hand, and hopefully you had some low mana stuff, or you discarded a lot of stuff already somehow. Actually, it doesn't even matter. As long as you discarded creatures, you would be fine. So let's say both you and your opponent just discarded like 5 cards. Each player discards his or her hand and then draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards a player discarded this way. Kind of a mouth trip up, hey, we heard you like cards. But either way, pay 3 mana, everyone discards their hand and then draws new cards. So let's say you discard 5 and draw 5. Now you and your opponent just loaded up the graveyards with a total of 10 cards. Not only that, but you just hit 5 new cards, and depending on how you build this deck, one of them is Graveyard Recursion, and your opponent's going to have to deal with it. It's combolicious, it's perfect, it's awesome. I like it a lot. Victimize. Okay, if Graveyard Recursion is your kind of thing, this thing is one of the cherrier versions. 3 mana, it's a sorcery, but whatever. Choose 2 target creature cards in your graveyard and sacrifice a creature. If you do, return the chosen cards to the battlefield tapped. Okay. It would go like this. Turn 1, Putrid Imp. Turn 2, Ancestral Knowledge at the end of your opponent's turn. Turn 3, discard 2 creatures and Victimize. So you discard 2 fat creatures from your hand and then cast Victimize, and hopefully your opponent was tapped out. If you went first, they only have 2 mana and they probably tapped out to play a creature. Hopefully. But that is your god play. That's one of the god plays. I mean, you can do a Putrid Imp turn 1, a turn 2 Reanimate any fat creature, a turn 2 Exhume any fat creature is strong. Doing a turn 1 Putrid Imp and then a turn 3 Dimir Doppelganger means a turn 4 Clone, and that's one of the slower versions. But this deck is so weird. I mean, if you do Victimize and you bring back, let's say, like a Tidesprout Tyrant and a Runescar Demon, that's really strong. Anything that has a when it hits the opponent ability just seems so cool and so infinity. But I don't know. If the ability has to do with the graveyard, if you're dropping them on turn 2, it's doubtful that they're even going to have anything in their graveyard. So you kind of got to be picky with what your alpha strike #1 creature is. The Tidespout Tyrant is a lockup. Like, that's for the control build. But I don't know, maybe I should be a little bit more skeptical of these things of the Risen Deep. Like, is it a big deal to be trying to cast an instant or sorcery from my opponent's graveyard if I'm swinging in on turn 3 when they probably don't have anything? We'll have to see how that plays out. We're getting to some juicy cards though. But Victimize, that's a turn 3, you bringing 2 super fat cards from your graveyard into play. You do have to sacrifice a creature though, so keep in mind that you're losing something. And if you're doing the quick version, it's either going to be a Putrid Imp as a turn 1 creature, or there aren't even any turn 2 creatures, so it's either going to be a Dimir Doppelganger, which would suck to sacrifice, or a Hidden Horror, which would be fine. Next in line, Sift. 4 mana, draw 3 cards, then discard a card. This card is so sick, dude. There's up to 4 of them, and it makes you discard a card. That's not even bad. That is exactly what this deck wants. And I don't know, man. That's the reason. Same thing with this. Hidden Horror. 3 mana for a 4/4. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice unless you discard a creature card. Things that look like disadvantages are built to work in your favor. And I can already see myself just slowly adding cards and taking away cards. And I'm going to end up taking out these Putrid Imps. It's rarely something that you want to see late game. And the more I look at this deck, the more lamer it seems to just sprint for something. I mean, I never even did the turn 2 Exhume, so maybe I need to keep playing until I get that out of my system, because I still want to do that, but that's playing the turbo build of this deck, and I think I'm slowly going to change my build into the control version. So we'll see how that plays out. As you can see right now, I'm not even running Doom Blades, which just feels weird. And there's more card draw that I'm missing out on. But just seeing me get to this Sift makes me realize that, there's a different way to build this deck. And the smart play, the play that you're going to see so much, is turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, do whatever. God, this deck looks weird right now. Oh my god, it looks so naked. It needs something. Like, look at my first play. Oh, go ahead. I'm just going to play an Evolving Wilds and a whole bunch of Swamps and Islands. Oh, I got Reanimates in my hand, can't do nothing. I have Accumulated Knowledge, can't do anything. I have Exhume. I have no discard elements yet, so I can't do anything. Am I dead? I have Dimir Doppelganger, so my first play is a 0/2 creature. That's terrible. Turn 3 starts to look better with a Hidden Horror. That's like my first chance. Oh, this deck looks bad. I need to put in all the Doom Blades. Alright, so that makes it look a little bit more reasonable, but that's still pretty shisty. At least now I can kill my opponent's creature and try to res it, but... Okay, here's what I was getting at. Turn 4 Sift, you draw 3 cards. That just puts you towards... Rise from the Graves. But I'm not even playing Rise from the Graves, dude. I don't know if I'm crazy or what's going on. 5 mana. Put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. That creature is a black zombie in addition to its other zombie types. And I don't know, man. I could really see a build where I take out all my Exhumes for Rise from the Graves. And here's why. Exhume, each player puts a creature from his or her graveyard onto the battlefield. So I'm only able to get one of my own dudes. So this deck is just changing, like, right before my eyes. I could even see myself pulling out those Reanimates. But we'll see how it goes. That could be the craziest play. But I already took out Putrid Imps. Now I just dropped all 4 Exhumes. This deck is just evolving right before my eyes. Let's keep rolling. Yeah, I took those out because I was going to put in... I guess I already did. Yeah, there they are. Okay. Alright, let's keep rolling. Turn 4 Sift can be followed by a turn 5 Ghast Lord of the Fugue, and hopefully you hit it after all that drawing 3 cards. Ghast Lord of the Fugue, 5 mana for a 4/4. Can't be blocked. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player reveals his or her hand. You may choose a card from it, and that player exiles that card. I'm playing with so many cards that have tricks if they hit my opponent. Like, I have completely changed from the cute combo deck to if this hits you, you're in trouble. I could see myself even taking out those Tidespout Tyrants in a pinch. I gotta keep that, dude. I don't know. Those Tidespout Tyrants are like my late game card. Like, I'll just start slowly bouncing all your permanents. But I don't know. That's not graveyard recursion. But the fact that I can just recur a Tyrant infinitely is just so strong. Maybe I should take out the Sphinx of Magosi before that. And put in Silent Blade Onis? No clue. We'll see where this deck ends up, and I'll just do a quick auto land tweak. No, we're still at 812. That's weird. I wonder if this deck has gotten better or worse from me just live editing it. Okay, so we just touched base on Gas Lord of the Fugue. Here is... Oh my god, dude. I love this card so much, but I don't know if I'm going to take him out or not. I love combos. I love card draw. And in this deck, I mean, sometimes this is the card that I'm looking for. River Kelpie. I will do a Runescar Demon just to grab a River Kelpie. Every time that I'm using a card draw, oh my god, I hope I draw a River Kelpie. And then once you get your River Kelpie, you just bring it back so many times that they're going to hate you. It even has Persist at the very bottom. So every time that it dies, it comes back into play with -1/-1. It's not Undying, where it gets +1/+1 like Geralf's Messenger. It's -1/-1 with Persist. 5 mana for a 3/3. When River Kelpie or another permanent on the battlefield from a graveyard... Wait, I can't even read. When River Kelpie or another permanent is put onto the battlefield from a graveyard, draw a card. That includes whenever he comes back from Persist, because it says whenever a River Kelpie is put onto the battlefield from a graveyard, and he has Persist. So that's one card draw. And now every time that a card, a permanent, not even a creature, whenever a permanent is put onto the battlefield from a graveyard, draw a card. And whenever a player casts a spell from a graveyard, draw a card. I don't know what instances a player is going to be casting a spell from a graveyard to where you can draw a card. Unless it applies to one of these creatures. Is it that ninja? No, that's their hand. Is it Regiel? You may cast target instant or sorcery from that player's graveyard. Whenever a player casts a spell from a graveyard. Yep, that's it. So that's the little cutesy thing there. You want to get Regiel of the Deep, attack, hit him, cast things from the graveyard, and then, I mean, you could be casting Cultivates or anything. It really doesn't matter. If they have creature removal, that's even better, or discard or something. But you're going to be drawing cards off of it. This deck is crazy, man. I'm still feeling this out. River Kelpie seems like a long game card, and I can't take it out. I like it a lot. Okay, you got Beacon of Unrest. It's like a Rise from the Graves that costs 1 extra black mana, and the benefit is that you can do artifacts too, and whenever you do it, you shuffle Beacon of Unrest into its owner's library. So this thing is always going back into your deck. You can get a little bit of infinite style recursion, because if you've already drawn your Runescar Demon, and it's either in your graveyard or in play, you can do whatever it takes, chump block with it, or if they have to kill it, or they're like basically dead, or it's just a stalemate, which ends up being on your side eventually. But yeah, you can just keep recurring this. Keep recurring your Runescar Demon, and every time that you recur it, it enters the battlefield, you get to go do another tutor and get something else. So that's fine. And every time that you tutor, that's what I was trying to get to eventually. Every time that you tutor, you can tutor for this. And then every time that you cast it, it goes back into your library. Oh my god, I'm so confused. Is that an infinite kind of thing or no? They also give you the option of playing with 2 Living Death. And as I continue to tweak this deck, I think I'm going to end up playing with both Living Death. Here's why. 5 mana. This is a little heavy. This is a little confusing. Each player exiles all creature cards from his or her graveyard. Then sacrifices all creatures he or she controls. Then puts all creatures he or she exiled onto the battlefield. So it's so heavy. You exile everything from your graveyard, and then you sacrifice all creatures. So all creatures you control end up getting sacrificed, and everything in your graveyard ends up coming into play. I don't know why I'm like being so weird about this, but they had to word it this way to avoid something, but I don't know what they had to avoid. Like, it's specific that you sacrifice your creatures, so that's an issue. And then, okay, I get it. Living Dead will not trigger River Kelpie. That's it. Y'all get it? Because River Kelpie only works when things come from the graveyard. And Living Dead specifically states that they come from the exile zone. That's really weird to me, but that's one of the reasons. Or that's like something that you'll realize, like, oh my god, I'm gonna cast Living Dead and I'm gonna draw like 80 cards, bro. Nah, that's not how it works, man. But you will draw cards. No, you won't. You won't. But Living Dead is strong, man. A turn. This is a very common thing. These are all things that you have 4 drops of. So it's going to be very common for you to do an accumulated knowledge at the end of your opponent's turn. It's going to be very common for turn 3 to drop a hidden horror and then just have this blocker. Turn 4, it's going to be very common for you to hit a sift and then draw 3 cards and then discard 1. And then it's going to be very common, where was she? It's going to be fairly common for you to hit a Living Dead. So that was turn 2, draw a card with accumulated knowledge. Turn 3, play a 4/4 wall that they can't terror because it's black. And it's not even a wall, you can attack with it. I just mentally consider it a wall. Turn 4, draw 3 cards and discard 1 card. And then you're going to discard a fat creature or a special creature. And then turn 5, Living Dead. You've drawn cards from accumulated knowledge, you've drawn 3 cards from sift, and hopefully you just hit one of your Living Deads. So you're going to lose your hidden horror if you haven't already. But then the card that you discarded comes into play, and all creatures on your opponent's side of the board get sacrificed. So this isn't just putting things from the graveyard into play. This is your board wipe. This is your Wrath of God. This is your Damnation for 1 extra mana that brings things back too. Still got to feel it out. Okay, we just talked about Rise from the Graves and how I foolishly or geniusly took out all 4 of my Exhumes for Rise from the Graves. And I think that's the better choice right now, because you can get your opponent's creatures. Exhume, you can't do that. Let's keep rolling. We're back to fat creatures that I was talking about. So that wraps this, at least these cards that I'm playing with, that wraps this up. I feel pretty confident about the transitions I made. I mean, I took out the Exhumes, and I took out Putrid Imps for Doom Blades, which I would be way happier to see than either of those cards normally. And then Rise from the Graves. So I just made this more of a late game build. I did take out my super cute Tidespout Tyrants, so I'm a little butthurt about that. But I put in all the creatures that have cool abilities when they hit my opponent. And there's a lot. We got Gaslord of the Fugue as 1. We got Rexiel of the Deep as 2. We have Silent Blade Oni as 3 and 4. And then Scion of Darkness is the 5th thing that has abilities when it pops your opponent. So this deck is weird, man. I guess there's a couple other things that I'm not playing with that they just make me feel crazy. So we'll touch base on those. And this just shows you how many ways you can build this deck. There's this Uma's Prowler, and if you're playing all 4 Putrid Imps, you might think about playing with this. It's just another way to discard cards, but it costs 2 mana. And that's it for me about that. See Beyond. Don't even know what to think about this, dude. 2 mana, sorcery speed, draw 2 cards, then shuffle a card from your hand into your library. So I don't know what card you're always going to want to put back in your library. Probably an extra land? But paying 2 mana to draw 2 cards, I could see myself trying to weasel that in the deck and just playing with all the card draw. It's really tempting. And it would just be like this turbo build of the deck. I don't even know what I would take out though. Maybe a Doomblade. If you're playing a control build of this deck, Distress has the craziest art. That dude has a version of himself on his head, getting close to his eye. And he's flipping out. Anyways, 2 mana, black mana. Target player reveals his or her hand. You choose a non-land card from it, and that player discards that card. So if you went first, turn 1, land drop. Turn 2, Distress. And you just take out whatever the best thing is. I mean, if you already have a reanimate in your hand, you could make them discard a creature and then steal it as fast as you can. You could make them discard a creature with hopes of doing a Beacon of Unrest later, or a Rise from the Graves. If you're in a crazy bad situation, you can distress yourself and make yourself discard a creature. But that's weird. Little weird. I don't think it combos with anything else. It's just, it's like spot removal before it becomes a problem. Dimir Cutpurse, get out of this deck, dude. You're so crazy. 3 mana for a 2/2. Whenever this deals combat damage to a player, they discard a card and you draw a card. I don't know. Is this really that cool? Like, 3 mana, and then they just have to deal with it. They have to block it, or they have to kill it. Otherwise, they're going to be discarding cards at such a fast rate, and you're going to be drawing cards at such a fast rate that they can't hang. But I feel like it's just going to get dealt with. Maybe it's good removal bait, and I should find some way to play with it. I just don't know. But having your opponent discard cards and you draw cards always seems good, but he has no evasion. The only evasion is him coming back through reanimation over and over and over. So if they have a bigger creature, he's a non-issue. We got these Cunning Lethomancers. 3 mana for a 2/2 human wizard. And I'm actually looking at this picture for the first time. That's pretty sick. He's like a really gross troll-looking evil wizard. And at the beginning of your upkeep, each player discards a card. So once again, we got more discard that can be thrown your opponent's way. I think even the next card, no, it's a little bit further. Consult the Necrosages. More discard for your opponent. There's a weird build of this deck to where you can just be throwing discard at them from all angles. And I never even thought that you could be reanimating your Cunning Lethomancer over and over and over, and then just depleting both of y'all's hands as fast as you can. I don't even know. I mean, obviously it benefits you more if you're playing with Rise from the Graves, Dimir Doppelgangers, Reanimates, which I could somehow take out. I just took out Exhume, so that kind of hurts. But even if your opponent kills this dude, you just bring him back. And then we're back to the same situation of each upkeep, each player discarding a card. I don't know. That's really funky. I think he's way better than Dimir Cutpurse. But we'll keep moving. You have the option of playing with 3 Doomed Necromancers. And I don't know. There's going to be people that are in love with this card. I haven't figured it out yet, or I can't get what he combos with so well. 3 mana for a 2/2. Pay 1 black, tap him, and sacrifice him. So you have to wait for Summoning Sickness to go away, but you could block something, chump block, and tap and sack. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So that seems okay. You can play with 3 of them, and you can build this deck to where you have so much graveyard recursion, it's like all of the deck. Like you can run all the Reanimates, all the Exhumes, all the Doom Necromancers. There's a couple more. No, I'm running just about all the other ones. But let's keep this going. This deck is so diverse, dude. At least consider running these Doom Necromancers. It's more graveyard recursion. It's more creatures. It's almost too much. You have the option of playing 2 Undermines. So if you're playing a control-y build, you gotta play with these, right? Counter target spell. Its controller loses 3 life. It's 2 mana and 1 black, so the cost is a little steep. But I mean, if they gave me the option to play with 4 of those, I would be playing with 4 of those. There's no limits on what you can counter either, so it's just straight up counter target spell. That's going to be juicy. Consult the Necrosages, another card. How am I not playing with this card? 3 mana, choose one. Target player draws 2 cards, or target player discards 2 cards. What am I doing not playing with that? I gotta play with that, right? Another card. How is this not in this deck? Diabolic Tutor. Go grab any card you want. 4 mana. Search your library for a card and put that card into your hand, and then shuffle your library. How could I think that this deck is so good that I don't even need to run Diabolic Tutor? That I don't know. That I don't know. Look at my turn 4 now. The only cards that look, and there's no more turn 4 cards to even get. Turn 4, I'm getting cards. I'm either sifting, drawing 3, and discarding 1, or I'm Diabolic Tutoring. God, that's so crazy. And if I sift, I could hit a Living Dead, or I could now Diabolic Tutor for Living Dead. So that's me just sprinting for my board wipe. And I still need to change this deck more. Okay, Body Double. Things are getting crazy over here. 5 mana, Body Double. For a 0/0, you may have Body Double enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature card in a graveyard. So, like, I don't know why I'm not playing with... Like, should I take out 2 Rise from the Grave and put in 2 Body Double? And if so, what would be the benefits of doing so? I mean, you may have Body Double enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature in any graveyard. So keep in mind that this thing can be killed in response to his enter the battlefield effect. I think. Like, they could incinerate it while it's a 0/0. Does that make sense? The benefit is that it doesn't take the creature out of the graveyard. So if you discard something fat, yeah, if you discarded something fat through either a Hidden Horror or a Sift, when you Body Double it, it stays in your graveyard. So you can still use a Rise from the Grave, or a Living Death, or a Beacon of Unrest, or a Reanimate. You could still reanimate it. So it just lets you get the creature twice. And I can see why that would be desirable. I mean, imagine if you did it to a River Kelpie. If you discarded a River Kelpie and then Body Doubled it. Oh my god, it makes sense now. The Body Double. This bid's gonna be so weird, dude. I'm like, this is like talk therapy as I just explain things to you, but I'm discovering things myself about this game. The reason you want Body Double is because he can be recurred from the graveyard, because he is a creature himself. So why play 4 Rise from the Graves when you can't Rise from the Grave a Rise from the Grave? But you can Rise from the Grave a Body Double. Does that make sense? I hope it does. I'm sure there's a couple other disadvantages that I'm missing out on, and I'm sure there's a couple other benefits that I'm missing out on. Oh, it's so heavy. It's so heavy. But yeah, if you get 2 River Kelpies into play, it's going to get ridiculous. You're probably going to run out of cards. And I love combo draw decks that can draw that many cards. Beacon of Unrest, we talked about that. Where were we? We were still talking about cards that I'm not playing with. Fool's Demise seems a little weirdo. 5 mana, enchant creature. When enchanted creature dies, return the card to the battlefield under your control. And when Fool's Demise is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return Fool's Demise to its owner's hand. So you can just infinitely chump block with something, or make it so that whenever one of your opponent's creatures dies, it comes back into play on your side. I love Fool's Demise because it's such a combo card. And I guess, I mean, the only combo that I can see is casting it on a Doomed Necromancer and then doing infinite graveyard recursion from your own graveyard. But that doesn't even seem that strong. Okay, Fool's Demise on a Cunning Lethomancer makes everyone infinitely discard. That's a little bit better, right? Turn 3, that Lethomancer thing. Discard some creatures, throw Fool's Demise on it. Now, even when it dies, it gets returned back to your hand. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Talk about Sphinx of Magosi. Here's another Sphinx. This one just shuffles it back into your library. So instead of letting them kill it, or I guess if they exiled it, you would shuffle it back. But if they just kill it, you'll reanimate it. We talked about those extractors. If you're doing that blue thing, here's Gather Specimens. 6 mana, instant. If a creature would enter the battlefield under your opponent's control, it enters the battlefield under your control instead. So in response to you casting a creature, I cast this, I get your creature. It's just weird that there's control magic style stuff in this deck in addition to reanimators. I guess you would just steal your opponent's creature, hoping that they would kill it, and then you reanimate it and just to get it back. Here's another thing that I might need to squeeze into this deck. I talk about how much I love card draw, and then we got these Decree of Pains. 8 mana. I know. 8 mana. Destroy all creatures. They can't be regenerated. Draw a card for each creature destroyed this way. And I don't know. I might be able to justify finding room for one of those if it was just like that. But it gets better. Instead of paying the full 8 mana, you have the option to pay 5 mana and cycle it. So you can cycle things at instant speed, so that's cool. When you cycle it, you draw a card, so that's cool. And when you cycle Decree of Pain, all creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. So it's a baby board wipe. You could cycle this Decree of Pain and then hope to draw your next one and actually be able to hard cast it. And you're going to draw so many cards. I got to find room for both of those. My build just got so screwy, man. I might pull this guy out. No, he has cycling. That's delicious. I could take out my ninjutsu dudes. They seem meh. I could take them out. I'm at 67 cards right now, so I got too many cards. Oh my god, but those dudes, you cast any non-land card, which is way strong. And ninjutsu. I don't even know. I don't know why I love this Kiga the Tidestar so much. I think it's just because when it dies, you gain control of target creature. So it's just a great way to change the... It just slowly takes all the creatures from your opponent's side of the battlefield to yours. And a 5/5 flying chump blocker that when it dies, you get one of your opponent's creatures is crazy. And it's even crazier and in a reanimator deck to where you're just bringing it back over and over. Oh my god. So I got to take out more stuff. Oh my god. It's already way hard to trim this deck down. Oh no. I love that that guy has cycling, but I might find some way to remove him. Maybe he's not that good. Maybe he is. I'm just playing this weird control version of this deck. But did we go through all the cards? Was that everything? I think that was just about all of them. And I'm still playing this kind of funky build. Maybe I'll just do one Decree of Pain. 8 mana is a little steep, and I do have a lot of card draw. But playing with 2 just seems so delicious. Don't even know what else I should take out. I'm gonna have to go back to the grindstone. Maybe I'll pull out a Victimize. I'm down to 13 creatures in this deck. I don't know if I can depend on that sacrifice mechanic to get 2 more back. My deck is so broken right now. This is such a bad deck, I feel like. Oh my god, I have no creatures. I just ended up taking out all my creatures. So I got to keep tweaking this deck. This was by no means a final deck list. Seems really bad, but I learned a lot. We'll just save this as a checkpoint and quit. That's it for this vid. Thanks for watching. Phone Cats.